she was kind of quiet or whatever. She is dynamic, and she had this sense of charisma and presence.
Yes.
And
Yes.
especially amongst young people, where it was a calming presence. And I said this, Molly, that I just wish they would have told the story more. I watched it in real time. We were down in like Savannah, Georgia, outside of Savannah, Georgia, in a rural school. And the school was meeting us there, and we went in, and they had the band playing, and the cheerleaders were there, and the football players were there. And we were doing one of these little things where it's the meet and greet type of thing. And the vice president just casually mentions she was a band kid. And I'm like, oh, my God.
Right.
Like, the humanizing part of that, and especially as a teacher and as a parent of kids who were around, played the piano or whatever, it was a big deal. And I don't think America knew that.
And then
We have talked a lot on this show about the messaging struggles we have seen from certain elected Democrats to start Donald Trump's administration, but somewhere where we certainly haven't seen that is with Governor Tim Walz, who has not taken his foot off the gas since the campaign. And not only is he pushing back against Donald Trump, he's instructing other Democrats how to do so. And he did that in a recent podcast with jong-fast, in which he absolutely went in on Trump for the horrible way that he has abandoned our ally in Ukraine, called him out for a couple of other things, and also gave a little advice to Democrats that I think is important. We're going to take a listen to it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's get into this great clip.
I want you to first talk to me about what it's like to be a governor right now.
Yeah, it feels very similar to COVID without the direct threat, hospitals overflowing, but it feels like the uncertainty that the COVID pandemic brought is there. It feels strange to not see the federal, I never saw the Trump administration as, real good partners during COVID, but I will tell you this, and I don't know if this has been talked a lot. Mike Pence did about all he could. He called me probably every other week. Mike Pence found masks for us, things like that. Like, he was trying to make it work, but he kind of was like on the sly. He couldn't do it from. And it feels like right now there's no one to turn to. There is no, and it's just so frustrating. Just for example, the pettiness of them. One of the first things that they defunded was Lutheran Social Services. And it's based in Minnesota from my church, the ELCA. And there are great social service organizations, and one of the things they do is they legally resettle refugees who are legally here, and we get them settled. They cut off funding and threw them into disarray, and they had to lay off people. So as a governor, I'm trying to figure out, can I backfill that? How do I do it? And then last week, he went after the American Association of Geographers, which of course we know is where all the spending in the government is happening, and it's where all the cabal to overthrow democracy is happening amongst geographers. He went after because it's an organization that I associate with. So as a governor, personally on this is just the pettiness of this, but the everyday fight, like what happens to Medicaid, what happens to our road funding, what happens, Minnesota is ahead of schedule. Xcel Energy is 5 years ahead of our 2040 goal on 100% clean energy. We are there. We're on the precipice of this. Now a lot of those investments are under attack. So I guess as a governor, you're trying to triage the situation as it stands. You're trying to craft a budget, a normal budget, in an environment where there's just such great uncertainty about what he does and what it means to our people.
Do you think that's specific to you because you ran for president against him, or do you think he's doing that?
No, he's doing that to everybody. It's just that the thing I think is scary about this is they find the time to be specific enough. Who the hell was going to try and cut funding to the American Association of Geographers? Although, in your piece you wrote, the language around the Gulf of Mexico is more than just buffoonery. There's the nationalism, there's all that. They're better organized, but they came after Lutheran Social Services in the first week. Like, who in God's name knows? It's a small social service organization funded, on a progressive Lutheran branch. And it happens to be mine. I think I'm the only governor that's a Lutheran. I was one of like 5 members of Congress, which I think might be the problem, just so you know. A few more Lutheran, just making the case. So
when we talk through this and we talk about what it looks like the sort of federalist. I mean, you guys have a lot more power. Like, one of the things that I always fault Democrats for is that, or at least I looked at Republican, during Biden's administration, we saw Texas really, and Florida, really just be like, we're doing our own thing.
Yes.
Now, and Democrats can do that to a certain extent, right? I mean, they may be punished. Yeah. So talk us through that.
Yes. And look, I hear the thing out there is that when we get back, which we'll fight. I'll tell you what people are going to expect is they're not going to expect us to tinkle around the edge with the ACA. They're going to expect universal health care. And if there's a lesson here, I always said this, we had a 1-vote majority in Minnesota when we moved clean energy, we moved reproductive rights, we moved a whole slew of progressive, very popular, including things around guns and gun safety, very popular things. We moved it with a 1-vote majority. And people ask, well, what do you call a 1-vote majority? A majority. Simple as that. These guys have learned that lesson, and governors have that ability. I'm in Europe trying to foster what I can on the trade. Now, look, if they cut our funding, it's $2 billion, out of a roughly $30 billion state budget. So it is a massive hole that we can't fill alone, but there are things that we can do. There are things that we can push back on. There are things that we can separate. Now, the irony of this is Republicans being all about states' rights until they're not about states' rights.
Right, of course.
We're still establishing ourselves. We're sub-federal level of government, but we have a lot of autonomy. Like, I can be invited to the Netherlands to speak. And I said this, Molly, that I'm a rule follower that used to be politics ends at water's edge, means with a unified voice to that. I recognize that the position right now, official position of the federal government is that we're not going to support Ukraine. That's not the majority position of Americans. And you can walk that line. And I think that's what we need to do more of. We need to push back. And again, I hope everybody, and I hope Republicans know this, you are teaching us a lot of what happens when we get back and control these, that we need to deliver for people and that's their downfall in this. Where are they delivering for people other than just angst and anger and taking it out on immigrants or whatever? No egg prices down. Right. Now you've got folks that lost their jobs. Now you've got confusion with our neighbors. So I have to tell you, a saying I always said is you lead with good policy and good politics will follow that. And the inverse of that is true. Bad policy will lead to bad politics. And I think Democrats got caught in the wilderness that our policies are popular, but for whatever reason, we didn't articulate it in a way that turned to good politics.
So there are a couple of things that I wanted to unpack there that I think were so important for Governor Walz to hit on. The first is the pettiness of the Trump administration. We also need to bring that pettiness to our obstruction. We have to stop everything they try to do. Nothing can be legitimate because this is not a legitimate administration. I always bring up the example of the unanimous confirmation of Marco Rubio, who is now sitting in silence with that gel spine that he has, that lack of any courage that is in Marco Rubio as Donald Trump completely abandons our ally and praises Putin. That is not someone who deserves legitimacy from the Democratic Party. We have to push back, and we have to do it in the strongest and loudest way possible. And then we have to carry that over when we are eventually in the majority after the midterms. That's what we have to do. Can't be small changes. Can't be here and there. It's got to be big reform and fast. That is what Elon Musk is trying to do with Doge in breaking things. We have to take the same energy and invest it into things that help the American people. Let us be real and work hard and do it quickly. That is what it is all about. And of course, you also saw Governor Walz there call out the disgusting actions of Donald Trump on Ukraine, complete failures of his administration, focused on all the wrong stuff. He's delivering the right message at the right time and showing Democrats how to do it. Really appreciate that he's doing that. I'm seeing more and more media appearances from Governor Walz. Could he be on this show at some point? I don't know, we've had a fun couple of guests lately, and one of them who I had a similar conversation about messaging with that. I'd really like you to take a look at, if you haven't already, is Senator Tina Smith. She came on the show, and I want to take a look at what we had to say there.
Yeah, well, so I think there's a bunch of things that are happening right now that are, I think, important to pay attention to. One is just like thinking about my Senate colleagues. I mean, let's just be honest. I'm a 66-year-old grandma, and I'm like probably on the young side of the United States Senate. And I'm a pretty pissed off grandma right now, but that's just what's going on. And so part of it is helping people to understand the power, people who are my colleagues in the Senate, understanding the power of stepping away from, media like, CNN and MSNBC, sort of the ways that they've always communicated with people, and say, wait a minute, look, over here, this is where the action is. This is where people who are not like the deep political insiders who are just trying to figure out how to live their lives and afford their lives. This is where they're getting information. And like, we want to be there talking to them. And that's part of what this is about. I think my colleagues on the Democratic side are kind of tuning into that. I'm working with Cory Booker on this a lot. Cory is amazing and really understands this. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is just like people taking a breath and going, okay, like their whole plan is to exhaust us and distract us, and we can't fall for that. We need to stay focused on what is really going on, and that is what I think we're all doing, and we want to help other people out there doing. The world is full of like idealistic, organized activist people. Many of them probably like to watch what you have to say because it gives them a sense of power and autonomy in this moment, and just sort of saying, okay, pay attention. What these guys are doing is trying to tell you don't have any power. You can't do anything about this. This is all out of your hands. This is what bullies do all the time. And that's what these people are. They're bullies, but they're bullies with a lot of power. And we have to shine a light on that.
Exactly what Senator Smith had to say is what we saw play out in that interview with Governor Walz. These are hyper-nation issues, but they're also incredibly local. These are affecting individuals in communities, but certainly they're affecting whole communities, counties, cities, states, the country, all these horrible actions of the Trump administration. But if we talk in the broad strokes about it, if we just try to push through the larger narrative, I think sometimes that gets lost, especially with the people who are bumping into their politics rather than searching them out, who are oftentimes so influenced by the algorithms that Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, TikTok, all in Donald Trump's pocket. We know what type of news they're getting. So we have to be specific in the way that we break through. We're always trying to do that on the show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.